A very good afternoon to all my dear students. How are you all? I hope your preparation for auditing and ethics subject is done till chapter number 9, which we have covered in the last session, right? So today students will be starting with the revision of chapter number 10, which is audit of banks. But before starting with that, I would really like all of you to reply whether you have gone through all the chapters till chapter number 9 the way I have told you that you need to revise the earlier chapters also. Quickly send in your replies. Meanwhile, I'll share the file. So we'll be starting with chapter number 10, which is audit of banks. And Shoaib is saying that yes, he has done. So Shoaib, have you covered all the chapters till chapter number 9, starting from the very first chapter? So, see students, chapter number 9 along with chapter number 10, the weightage that is given is 8 to 12%. To both the chapters together form the weightage of 8 to 12%, which is high so far as your marks are, your audit exam is concerned. So a very important chapter and a very easy chapter also. So Shoaib is saying, yes, ma'am, I flipped the pages, but flipping the pages means that you have revised. Flipping, say, I always tell you that before coming for the next session, you should revise the earlier chapters by flipping, going through the paper, through the pages of the earlier chapters. So it does not mean that you will just flip on the papers and you will not revise. You have to revise also. Okay? And Sukarna is saying that she has done till chapter number 8, which is good. Okay, Shoaib is saying that yes, I consider all the things. That is good. That is good. Right. So, audit of banks. So, students, first of all, the first topic that we are going to cover is types of banks, right? There are 6 types of bank that are given in a module. That is the commercial bank, the rural regional banks, RRBs, cooperative banks, payments bank, development banks, and small finance banks, right? So, you may get a short note on any of the types of bank or any 2 type or 3 types of banks. So commercial banks are the most widespread banks. These have a large number of products and services that they offer to the general public as well as to the other segments of the economy. And the main functions of the commercial bank is accepting the deposits and granting the loans. Your banks like HDFC, ICICI. So these are what? The commercial banks, and the main function is to accept the deposit and granting of advances, right? Regional rural banks, that is RRB, these are set up in rural areas of different states for providing the basic banking and financial needs of rural communities, right? Example is Punjab Grameen Bank or your Tripura Grameen Bank. So a very simple topic. So I'll just quickly take you through this topic. Cooperative banks. So these banks basically function like commercial banks, but these are set up on the basis of cooperative principles, right? We all have done the audit of cooperative society in chapter number 9. So you all are now aware as to what is cooperative principle. And these may be registered under the Cooperative Society Act or the Multi-State Cooperative Society Act, right? And they cater to the needs of the agriculture and the rural sectors. Example can be Gujarat State Cooperative Bank Limited, right? Then the fourth one is payment bank, which is a new type of bank recently introduced by RBI. And here the banks are allowed to accept restricted deposits. So restricted deposits are accepted. However, these banks cannot issue loans or credit card, but yes, current account or savings account can be opened with these banks. ATM, debit card, internet banking, mobile banking, all these facilities are available with these payments bank. Example, your Airtel payment bank. Then the next one is development banks. As the name suggests, it provides fund for infrastructure facilities for the economic growth. Example, your IDBI or your SIDBI, that is Industrial Development Bank of India or Small Industries Development Bank of India. And the last is Small Finance Bank, which is set up by RBI to make available basic financial and banking facilities to the unserved and unorganized sectors like the marginal farmers, the small and micro business units, right? Example is your AU Small Finance Bank. Simple. So very simple topic, but yes, you can always get to write short note on these, on any of these, right? Now the next topic is about RBI. So I'm sure that you have been studying about RBI. You have studied about RBI in a number of times. So let us just have a look as to how RBI is the regulating body for the banking industry. So basically, the entire functioning of the banking industry is regulated by the Reserve Bank of India, and RBI acts as a central bank, right? And RBI is responsible for development and supervision of the constituents of Indian financial system. Constituents is basically your participants, so it can be the banks or the non-banking financial institution. And RBI determines in conjunction with central government about the monetary and the credit policies, right? And RBI is responsible for regulating the activities of the commercial banks and the other banks. So what are the various functions of RBI? So issuance of currency, right? Regulation of currency issue. It acts as a banker to central and state government. It acts as a banker to commercial and other types. Other types of banks and the term lending institutions. It regulates the activities of commercial and other banks. Just a minute. Just give me a minute. So the important functions are issuance of currency, regulation of currency issue, it acts as a banker to central and state government. It acts as a banker to commercial and other types of banks and term lending institution, and regulating the activities of commercial and other banks, right? So RBI has the power to inspect any bank, and most importantly, no bank can commence business of banking or open new branches without obtaining license from RBI, right? So very simple, right? Now, there is a topic given on page number 10.6 of your module. Just a minute. So the topic is with respect to the operations of the bank being conducted at the branches. This is given on page number 10.6 of your module. So you all must be aware that the banking operations are conducted only at the branches. So what is done at the other head office or the zonal offices? So the banking operations are conducted only at the branches. The other offices, they act as what? Controlling authorities or the administrative offices, right? And what is their work? They lay down the policies, systems, and internal control procedures for conduct of business in compliance with statutory and regulatory impositions and compliance of accepted accounting principles and practices, right? And these offices, they also delegate the powers and they fix the responsibilities and accountabilities. And they are basically the other offices other than the branches, they are basically involved in effective supervision, monitoring, and control over the business activities, right? And in case of any deviations in there, any deficiency in the working of branches or the entire bank is there, so they deal with such deviations, right? So the banking operations are conducted only at the branches. The other offices, they act as controlling authorities or the administrative offices. Clear? Now, the regulatory framework. Another topic that is given is regulatory framework. So here basically we are discussing about the various acts that are applicable with respect to the working of a bank. So first and foremost, the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934. Then you have Banking Regulation Act 1949, State Bank of India Act 1955, right? Companies Act 2013. Then your Banking Companies Acquisition and Transfer of Undertakings Act 1970, read RRB Act, that is Region Rural Banks Act 1976, Banking Companies Acquisition and Transfer of Undertaking Act 1980, Information Technology Act 2000, the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002, and Securitization and Reconstruction of Financial Assets and Enforcement of Security Interest Act 2002. So as such, you must be aware about the regulatory framework. So if you get a question with respect to the regulatory framework of a bank, so you must be able to write 5-6 names of the acts that are applicable. And I'm sure that you'll be able to write like Companies Act 2013, then your Information Technology Act 2000, then your Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002, RBI Act 1934, Banking Regulation Act 1949, State Bank of India Act 1955. So like this, you can learn the names of the acts that you find easy to learn, right? Then what are the various features which are peculiar in banks? You do one thing, you send me reply. What according to you are the various features which are peculiar to banks? Quickly send in your replies. So this topic is given on page number 10.7 of your module. I'm waiting for your replies. Peculiarities or the specific features of banks. Sukaina, Shoaib, please reply. So Shoaib is saying excessive use of technology. That is correct. Others also please reply. So the various features which are peculiar to banks are huge volume and complexity of transaction, wide geographical spread of banks network. So a number of branches are there. Geographically, they are spread across the country and in fact across the world. Large range of products and services are offered. Extensive use of technology and strict vigilance by the banking regulator. Who is the banking regulator? RBI, right? Now, what are the various types of audit report that are to be issued, right? So this is our next topic, types of bank audit reports that are to be issued. So this statutory central auditor, he has to furnish the following reports. So what are those? So first is relating to the adequacy and operating effectiveness of internal control over financial reporting, and we all have done this under section 143 subsection 3 clause I, right? So this is report on adequacy and operating effectiveness of internal control over the financial reporting, right? Then is the long form audit report. Then report on compliance with the SLR requirements. Then report whether the treasury functions are in accordance with the instructions issued by RBI. Then report with respect to the income recognition, the asset classification and provisioning, whether all these are as per the guidelines of RBI. Then the report regarding the serious irregularities noticed while conducting the audit, that requires immediate action. And last is report with respect to the status of compliance with two committees. What are these two committees? Ghosh Committee and Jilani Committee. So Ghosh Committee has given recommendations with respect to fraud and malpractices, and Jilani Committee has given the recommendation with respect to internal control and inspection and the credit system. So this is the second last, and the last one is the report on the instances of adverse credit deposit ratio in rural areas. So basically where the more credit has been given and the deposit is very less, and specifically in case of rural areas. So these are the 8 reports. You can always get a 4-mark question here. So first is the report with respect to the adequacy and operating effectiveness of internal control over financial reporting in terms of section 143 subsection 3 clause I. The long form audit report, report on compliance with the SLR requirements, report with respect to the treasury operations, whether these are in accordance with the instructions of RBI, report as to whether the income recognition, the asset classification provisioning of the bank is as per the guideline of the RBI. Then the report whether any serious irregularity was noticed while conducting the audit, which requires immediate attention. The report with respect to the status of compliance to Ghosh Committee, which is related to fraud and malpractices, which gave the recommendation related to fraud and malpractices, and Jilani Committee, which gave the recommendations relating to the internal control and inspection of the credit system. Then the last is the report on the instances of adverse credit deposit ratio in case of the rural areas, right? So these are the various reports that the auditor has to give with respect to the bank. Now, understanding the accounting system of banks. So if an auditor has to conduct the audit, he needs to understand the accounting system. So see, when you understand the accounting system, so basically the features of accounting system of the bank will be same as the features which are relating to the bank. The way you said technology is there, large volume of transaction is there, right? So see, in the recent time, there has been a sea change, a vast change in the use of technology, and there has been continuous evolution, which has led the bank to provide the customers the facility of anytime, anywhere banking. Simple, right? And how is this become possible? Because of the availability of internet, the mobile connectivity, all the monetary transactions can be carried out very quickly, right? In an expeditious manner, that is very quickly, right? So I can say on real-time basis. So let me just mark the keyword for you. Right? For the students, as you all know, that transactions of the banks are voluminous. They are huge in numbers, right? So auditor needs to consider, he needs to understand the system of recording of the transaction, transmission of the data, and the storage of information also, right? And he needs an understanding about the internal control system of the banks, right? And in a computerized environment, the auditor needs to be familiar with the norms and parameters of RBI guidelines and whether the same are incorporated or built into the banking system of the bank for which he is conducting the audit. But yes, the auditor cannot go by the assumption that the system generated information is correct and can be relied upon without any evidence that demonstrates that the system is as per the required parameters. So blindly, auditor cannot just rely on the system generated information. He will have to apply what? Professional skepticism, or you can say prudence. And wherever any calculation or any authenticity is to be checked manually, auditor will consider that. So this was with respect to what? Understanding the accounting system in banks. So first of all, we said that there has been a huge change, a sea change due to the use of technology. and continuous evolution. And the banks are able to provide the customers with convenience and comfort of anytime, anywhere banking, right? And on real time basis, the customers can complete their transactions because of the availability of your internet, mobile connectivity, right? Further, while understanding the accounting system in banks, the auditor needs to understand that the transactions are voluminous and the system, and he needs to understand the system of recording, the transmission, and the storage of the data along with the internal control systems within the organization. And if there is any computerized environment, see, you may get a question that you are conducting the audit of so and one of the article clerk says that since it is a computerized environment, so the team can rely on the data generated by the system, or it is implied that the banking regulations, banking guidelines have been complied with. So the answer will be that with respect to computerized environment, first of all, the auditor needs to familiarize himself with the norms parameters as per the latest RBI guidelines and whether the same is incorporated or built within the system of the bank, right? Further, he cannot go by the assumption that the system generated information is correct and he cannot rely on it without obtaining the evidence. He will have to apply professional skepticism and prudence, and if any data is to be checked, if any authenticity or consistency of the information is to be checked manually, he needs to consider that. Is it clear? So very simple topics, all the topics that we have covered so far. So Shoaib, Sunil, Gangadev, Sukaina, please reply whether you have understood these topics. Very simple topics. And now we'll be starting with bank audit approach. Quickly send in your replies. So Shoaib and Sunil, Gangadev are saying clear. Others also please reply. So the next topic that we'll be covering is the bank audit approach. So see, when the auditor is going to conduct the audit of a bank, so the audit approach will consist of 3 steps. First of all, drawing an audit plan. Then control environment, understanding the control environment at the bank. And then the engagement team discussions. Okay? So what is the topic? Bank audit approach. So drawing an audit plan. So students, you will see that when we are covering various aspects with respect to this chapter, audit of banks, you will see that more or less whatever you have understood and learned so far in terms of SA 210, 220, 300, 320, 240, 250, everything is going to come here. Because see, the basis will be the same whether it is the audit of a company or whether it is the audit of a banking company, right? So whatever you have understood in the earlier chapters, and for all those who have learned those chapters, they are going to find these discussions that we are just going to have very easy, right? So see, drawing an audit plan. So when the auditor draws an audit plan, the audit plan should be based on the nature and level of operations of the bank, right? The nature of adverse features associated with that bank, the level of compliance based on previous reports. So whether the bank has complied with the various guidelines. So last year, if the auditor conducted the audit, what was his his opinion, or if any other auditor conducted the audit, then their opinion. Audit risks based on inadequacy or breach of internal control and familiarization of the exercise carried out. So basically, when the auditor is drawing an audit plan, he will consider the nature and level of operations, the nature of adverse features, if any, the level of compliance based on previous report, and the audit risk associated and the breach of internal control, if any. If auditor is familiar with any kind of breach of internal control that has happened with respect to the internal control of the bank, auditor will take that into account, right? Then the control environment at the bank. So the bank has to apply appropriate controls in order to mitigate its risk. So what can be various kind of controls? See, segregation of duty. We all know that this is one of the internal control, and accurate measurement, reporting of positions, verification and approval of transaction, reconciliation of positions and results, setting up limits, physical security of banks. So I can say CCTVs and all. So these are what internal control, which is implemented by whom? The client, or and in this case the banks, right? So auditor will consider, he will consider the understanding of what the control environment at banks, right? Now, when the auditor is considering the control environment as bank, he may ask the various kind of questions. So the following are certain common questions or steps which have to be kept in mind while undertaking or performing the control activities. So when auditor is taking a particular control that has been implemented by the bank, so he will consider as to who performs the control. Does the above person has the requisite knowledge and authority to perform the control? What evidence is available to demonstrate or prove that the control is performed? When and with what frequency is the control performed? Is the frequency enough to prevent, detect, and correct material misstatement? Where is the evidence of performance? For how long evidence is retained? Is evidence accessible? Why is control being performed? What type of errors are prevented, right? How is control performed? What are the control activities? Can these activities be bypassed? So he will ask all these questions when he is obtaining an understanding about the control environment of the bank, right? And the next topic is with respect to engagement team discussions. So once the auditor has drawn the audit plan. So while drawing an audit plan, we have seen that all these factors will be considered. Then auditor will obtain an understanding of the control environment of the bank, and then there will be engagement team discussions. See, all the personnel of the engagement team, along with the, if any experts are contracted by the firm, all this will form what your engagement team, and the engagement team should hold discussions for better understanding of the bank, its environment, and the internal control. Quickly tell me, where have you studied this earlier, that the auditor should obtain an understanding of the entity, its environment, including internal control? Quickly tell me the essay number. Shoaib, correct, and very quick also. Sunil Gangadev, Sukanya, Sukaina. So it is essay 315. Identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement through understanding the entity and its environment, right? So we were studying what engagement team discussions. So we have seen that all personals and the experts who are contracted by firm, they form the part of engagement team, and they should hold discussions in order to have a better understanding of the bank, its environment, and the internal control. Plus, if there is any assessment with respect to potential for misstatement, that is whether misstatement can happen. And all this discussion should be documented for future reference, right? And the discussions between the engagement team partners and engagement partners should be done on account of susceptibility of bank's branch financial statement of material misstatement. So they will have a discussion as to whether the bank branch financial statement or the respective branches can the financial statement of the respective branches, whether these can be susceptible to material misstatement. And ordinarily, all this discussion take place at the planning stage, right? So with respect to the bank audit approach, we have seen that there will be what? Drawing an audit plan, control environment at the bank, and then engagement team discussions. So an important topic, you may get a 3 or 4 mark question as to what are the various steps of the bank audit approach. And then students, when we were discussing about engagement team discussions, see these engagement team discussions, then that can be on various matters. Like what are the errors that may be more likely to occur, or what are the errors which have been identified in the prior years. So these 2 points are related to errors. Or the next 2 points relating to professional skepticism. So need to maintain professional skepticism throughout the audit team. Need to be alert for information and other conditions that indicate a material misstatement that may have occurred, right? Then audit responses to engagement risk, pervasive risk, specific risk. Pervasive is having an impact on the financial statement as a whole. Then method by which fraud might be perpetrated by bank personnel or within particular account balances or disclosures. So this point relating to fraud. So the engagement team discussion can be with respect to various matters. And these are the matters like errors that may be likely to occur or that have been identified in prior period. Then the method by which fraud may be perpetrated by bank personnel, that is, fraud may be committed by the bank personnel and others within the particular account balances or disclosures. Then your audit responses to engagement risk. So the risk that are associated with the particular audit engagement, pervasive risk that have an impact on the financial statement as a whole, and specific risk can be risk which have an impact on specific assertions, right? Then the need to maintain professional skepticism throughout the audit. That is, the auditor need to be alert for information and other conditions that indicate that a material misstatement may have occurred, right? And if I ask you that what will be the advantages of such discussion? If such discussion is taking place, what are the advantages of such discussion? So what are these discussions? These are the engagement team discussions that are happening as the bank audit approach. So the advantages can be, see, if fraud has been discussed, right? Susceptibility of the bank's financial statement to material misstatement due to fraud. If this has been discussed, then it enables the engagement team to consider appropriate responses to fraud risk, right? Because all these discussions have taken place, so it enables the engagement to consider the appropriate responses to fraud risk related to, again, engagement risk, pervasive risk, and the specific risk. Further, if discussions are there within the team, it will enable the engagement partner to delegate the work to experienced engagement team members, right? And determine the procedure that is to be followed if the fraud is identified, right? And last, it will enable the engagement partner to review the need to involve specialists to address the matters relating to fraud. So if discussions with respect to fraud are being done at the planning stage, so obviously it is going to help the engagement partner to see as to whether there is a need to involve the specialist and to address these matters relating to the fraud. So this was your topic relating to bank audit approach. Let me just take you through this topic from the book and then we'll be starting with the next topic. So bank audit approach में we are discussing about drawing an audit plan, control environment at the bank, then engagement team discussions, right? So when we talk about drawing an audit plan, so it should be based upon various features associated with the bank, like the nature, level of operations, the nature of adverse features, level of compliance based on previous reports, and audit risk based on inadequacy or breach of internal control, right? Control environment at the bank may we have seen. So when we talk about control environment, it is basically the various internal control that has been implemented by the management in the bank. So it can be segregation of duty, physical security. Physical security is like putting CCTV cameras or any such physical security for the protection of the assets, you can say. Setting up the limits, authorizations, right? Approval of the transactions. And whenever auditor is considering the control environment, he'll ask these officials all these things, right? Then engagement team discussions may we have seen. Just a minute. So engagement team discussions, we have seen that it will involve the all personnel of the team as well as the experts who are contracted by the audit firm. They form what? Engagement team. And why are the discussions required? So that they gain better understanding of the banks and its environment and the internal control system, right? And these discussions are to be documented. And these are to be done based on the susceptibility of the bank's branch financial statement to material misstatement. And generally, these are done at the planning stage. So, what are the various matters? So, you may get a question that you are conducting the engagement in discussions with respect to your bank audit approach. What are the matters that can be discussed within the team? So these will be the matters that you are going to write. And you may get another question in it that what will be the advantages that will follow. So these are the three advantages. That is, if the susceptibility of bank's financial statement to material misstatement due to fraud is considered, it will enable the engagement team to consider an appropriate response to the fraud risk, and it enables the audit engagement partner to delegate the work according to the experience of the engagement team members and to determine the procedure to be followed if fraud is identified. And last but not the least, it further helps the audit engagement partner to review the need to involve what specialist, right? Is it clear? Quickly send in your replies. Is this bank audit approach topic clear to all of you? Quickly send in your replies. This is a very simple topic, but yes, you will have to once understood the terms, the various terms like advances, then we'll be doing drawing limit. We'll be doing a number of topics in this, mortgage, pledge. So you need to first understand, and then the learning is going to be very easy with respect to this chapter. So Shoaib is saying clear. Sunil Gangadev, Sukaina, please reply. So with respect to this topic, income recognition policy, I'll be taking this later on. Now, the form and content of financial statement of a bank. So section 29, subsection 1 and subsection 2 of the Banking Regulation Act 1949 is applicable with respect to the form and content of the financial statement of the bank, right? So section 29, subsection 1 and subsection 2, it deals with the form and content of financial statement of banking company and their authentication, right? And this is also applicable with respect to the nationalized banks, SBI, and the RRB Regional Rural Bank. So according to section 29, subsection 1 and subsection 2, so every banking company has to prepare the balance sheet and the P&L as required in third schedule of this act. So form A is there with respect to balance sheet and form B is there with respect to P&L. So the bank has to follow this format, right? Further, in case it is a company that is a banking company, so disclosure requirements as per the accounting standard also needs to be followed. So this was with respect to what? Your form and content of financial statements. Who will prepare the financial statement? It is the bank who is going to prepare. So the next topic is relating to audit of the accounts, the financial statements which have been prepared by the bank management. Now the audit of such accounts. So section 30 is there, which says that the balance sheet and P&L of a banking company will be audited by a person who is duly qualified under any law to be an auditor of the company, right? So any person who is qualified to be an auditor of the company is qualified to be an auditor of a bank. Simple. The next topic, eligibility, qualification, disqualification of auditor. So you just have to understand that it is the same as is applicable to a company auditor in terms of section 141. Now, appointment of auditor, important question. So basically, in case of a banking company, the auditor is appointed in AGM by the shareholders. In case of nationalized bank, the auditor is appointed by bank acting through its board of directors. So board of directors will appoint the auditor. However, in both the cases, whether it is a banking company or whether it is a nationalized bank. So in a case of a banking company, we have seen that the shareholders are going to appoint the auditor in AGM, and nationalized bank may bank acted through its BOD. In both of these, the approval of RBI before the appointment is made. So the approval of RBI is required, right? And in case of RRB, the auditor is appointed by the bank along with the approval taken from the central government. Simple. So nothing to understand as such, just like see, company may you all know that shareholders, so AGM में, nationalized bank में board of directors. In both the cases, RBI का approval is required. RRB in case of regional rural bank, bank along with the approval of central government. Remuneration of auditor, you all are aware that in case of the banking company, it is section 142. So the auditor, in case of the remuneration of the auditor, in case of banking company will be determined in terms of section 142 of the Companies Act 2013. That is, it will be decided in the general meeting or as it is determined in the general meeting, the way it is determined in the general meeting, right? And in case of the auditor of a nationalized bank, SBI, it will be fixed by RBI in consultation with the central government. Clear? Now, again, the powers of auditors. So, the powers of auditors of all the banks, be it a banking company, nationalized bank, SBI, RRB, it will be the same as that of the company auditor in so far as the matters of access to books, accounts, vouchers, documents are concerned. Simple. Simple. Now, the auditor's report. To whom the auditor's report will be made. So the auditor's report in case of nationalized bank, the auditor is going to make the report to the central government stating the following. And students, in case of SBI also, the report is given to CG and the format, the points that we are going to discuss, these are almost the same as in case of the nationalized bank. So nationalized bank may report is given to CG stating the following, and SBI may it is given to CG, and the matters that are mentioned below are almost the same. So there are 4 points that the auditor's report will contain, that whether in the opinion of the auditor, the financial statement reflected true and fair view of the affairs of the bank. Plus, if any explanation or information was called by the auditor, whether the same has been given to him and the same is satisfactory or not. Right? So, two things are there. Whether in the opinion of the auditor, the financial statement reflected true and fair view of the state of affairs of the bank. And if any information has been called or any explanation has been called by the auditor, whether it has been given to him and the same is satisfactory. Simple. Then whether the transactions of the bank that came to his notice, so whether all such transactions are within the powers of the bank. Whether the returns that have been received from the offices or the branches, whether these are adequate for the purpose of bank. And any other matter which the auditor considers should be brought to the notice of the central government. So we have seen that the topic is what, where the auditor's report will be submitted. So we have seen that in case of nationalized bank, auditor shall make the report to CG stating the following, and same will be the case of SBI also. So first is whether in the opinion of the auditor, the financial statement reflected true and fair view of the state of affairs of the bank. And if any information or explanation has been called upon, whether it has been given and the same is satisfactory. The transactions of the bank that the auditor becomes aware, whether these are within the powers of the bank. The returns from the offices and the branches received, whether these are adequate for the purpose of audit. And any other matters which is considered important to be brought to the notice of the CG by the auditor, that will be included. Right? In the format of report, it basically says that the auditor, whether it is a central or a branch auditor, they need to comply with standards on auditing. And one important point that you need to consider is, in the report, not only the information relating to the unaudited branches. So, for example, let's say XYZ bank is there and there are a number of branches of this bank. So, when the report of this bank is given, the auditor is going to mention in the bank, not to in the audit report, the information about not only relating to the number of unaudited branches, that is, these are the number of branches which are unaudited. Not only this information will be given. Along with the number of unaudited branches, what information is to be given? The quantification of advances, interest income, interest expense of these unaudited branches will be disclosed in the audit report. This why? Because this is a useful information for the users of the financial statement, and these are in the best international trends, that is globally this is done, right? So not only the information relating to the number of unaudited branches, but quantification of advances, the interest income, interest expense, and unaudited branches also, right? Further, if the auditor is conducting the audit of a banking company, the report shall include the matters as given in section 143. So I hope you remember chapter number 8 that we have done. So the matters are specified there and we have discussed those matters in detail there, right? And you all must be aware we have done in chapter number 8 that CARO 2020 is not applicable to a banking company. So these matters are not to be reported. Now, if you remember, we did a topic of long form audit report, that one of the reports is long form audit report. So as such, the entire format of this long form audit report is not in your syllabus so far as your intermediate course is concerned. So basically what is there in your syllabus with respect to long form audit report is that, see, this is the audit report along with the audit report which is required as per the statutory requirements of the Companies Act. The terms of appointment of the auditor of a public sector bank, private sector bank, or the foreign bank, it may contain that there is a requirement of what? Long form audit report, that the auditor needs to submit long form audit report. And the matters on which the report is to be given, these are the matters which are specified by the RBI. And the statutory central auditor, they need to submit this to the banks. So this report is submitted to the respective banks by 30th June of every year, right? And in order to ensure timely submission of this report, long form audit report, popularly known as LFAR, auditor must do proper planning so that he can complete LFAR on time and can provide it to the bank by 30th June, right? Further, as such, in the format of the audit of the long form audit report, there is no requirement to give executive summary, that is the summary of the entire report. However, the members may consider it is good to bring the key observation from the whole document. So executive summary is basically a summary of the important aspects of the entire report. So as such, in the format, there is no requirement of executive summary. But if the same is given, that is going to be helpful for the members, those who are going to the report, right? So long form audit report is, apart from the report as per the statutory requirements, these are, so there is this may be a requirement in the terms of appointment of the auditor of public sector bank, private sector bank, or the foreign banks. So matters are specified by RBI and the last date is what? 30th June. So LFAR, the auditor is going to submit the LFAR to the banks latest by 30th June, right? And in order to complete the LFAR on time, the proper planning is required. Is it clear? Is it clear? Quickly tell me. The next topic that we are going to cover now is reporting to RBI, which is on page number 10.14. But before that, I want all of you to reply whether whatever we have done so far is clear. So the next topic is reporting to RBI, right? So see, with respect to reporting to RBI, RBI has issued a circular with respect to implementation of recommendations of the committee relating to legal aspects of bank fraud, which is applicable to all the scheduled banks excluding the regional rural banks, right? So now we are studying what reporting to RBI. So first of all, let us just read the extract from the circular. So the circular says that if an accounting professional, whether in the course of internal or external audit or in the process of institutional audit, finds anything susceptible to be fraud, susceptible is prone to be fraud or doubtful, or fraudulent activity or act of excess power, or smell any foul play in any transaction, he should refer the matter to the regulator. Who is the regulator here? RBI. Any deliberate failure on part of the auditor should render himself liable for action. So this is the extract of one of the circulars of the RBI, which says that whether in the course of internal external audit or in the process of institutional audit, the accounting professional, he finds anything susceptible to fraud or fraudulent activity or access power or smell any foul play, then matter needs to be reported to the regulator, right? So here we are talking about essay, the reporting relating to fraud. Quickly tell me the essay number. We have, though not done the essay in detail, but we have done the essay in detail. So what is the number of the essay relating to fraud? Quickly tell me. It is essay 240, right? So it says that reporting to RBI. So the RBI has issued a circular with respect to implementation of recommendation of the committee on legal aspects of bank fraud applicable to scheduled banks excluding RRBs, right? So the members, the auditor, he is required to report to RBI the matters that are stated in the circular. So if the auditor, he comes across anything which is susceptible to be fraud or fraudulent activity, or where there has been access power that has been used, or which smells any foul play in any transaction, then the same need to be reported to the RBI, the regulator, right? Now, you may think next question that may come to your mind is that if the auditor informs it to the RBI, it may lead to violation of confidentiality, right? So SC 250, that is consideration of laws and regulations in an audit of financial statement. It says that the duty of confidentiality is overridden by statute, law, or court. So if there is a requirement of any law, court, or statute that something is to be communicated to the regulator, so the duty of confidentiality is overridden by that, right? That is, it will not be if the auditor out of this circular, out of following this circular, the order communicates something to RBI, it will not lead to what? Violation of confidentiality, right? Further, in terms of SC 240, 240 is what? Auditor's responsibility relating to fraud in an audit of financial statement. See, auditor is responsible for obtaining reasonable assurance that financial statement as a whole are free from material misstatement, right? So as such, auditor is not expected to look into each and every transaction, but to evaluate the system as a whole, right? So auditor is not expected, and it is not practically possible also. We all have done inherent limitations of audit in chapter number 1, right? But if auditor, while performing his normal duties, if he comes across any instance, that should be reported to RBI plus to chairman or managing director of chief executive of the bank, right? So this was the topic relating to what? Your reporting to RBI. So first of all, we have seen that the RBI has issued a circular with respect to implementation of recommendation of the committee on. See, students, these are the keywords that you need to write if you want to fetch good marks. So RBI has issued a circular on what? On implementation of what recommendations? Whose recommendations of a committee? On what legal aspects of bank fraud applicable to, which is applicable to all scheduled banks except for RRBs, right? So the members are required to report to the RBI the matter stated in the circular. Further, SE 250, consideration of laws and regulations in an audit of financial statement. The duty of confidentiality is overwritten by the statute, law, or courts. And SE 240, the auditor's responsibility relating to fraud in an audit of financial statement. So the auditor is responsible for obtaining reasonable assurance that the financial statement as a whole are free from material misstatement, though, but he's not expected to look into each and every transaction, but to evaluate the system as a whole. However, if the auditor while performing his duties come across any instance, then there is reporting requirement to RBI or and to chairman or managing director of chief executive of the bank. Is it clear? Important topic. You can always get a 4-mark question with respect to reporting to RBI. I hope it is clear. And then a very important topic of what? Conducting an audit. So this topic has in total 18 points. Conducting an audit. So various aspects when the auditor is conducting an audit, right? So when the auditor is conducting the audit of the bank or the branches, the audit of such bank or branches will involve the following stages. So first, let us just have a look at all the points. What are these points? And then we'll start discussing them one by one. So this topic is given on page number 10.15 of your module. So see, when the auditor is conducting an audit, so initial consideration by the statutory auditor will be there. Then identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement, understanding the bank and its environment, including the internal control, understanding the bank's accounting process, understanding the risk management process, whereby there are further subpoints, then engagement team discussions, establishing the overall audit strategy, SA 300, developing an audit plan, again SA 300, audit planning memorandum, determining audit materiality. Quickly tell me the SA number relating to audit materiality. Quickly. Then consider going concern. Also tell me the SA number with respect to going concern. See students, when you will complete this topic, now conducting an audit, you will see, you will be able to analyze as to what is your understanding and learning with respect to the earlier chapters. Because see, I told you that though it is the audit of a bank, but the basic foundation is going to be the same. SA 210, if it talks about agreeing to the terms of audit engagement, it will be same, which is applicable here. Same way, SA 240, 250, 300, 300 relating to planning. And let me just have a look at your answers. Shoaib, correct. Others also please reply. So audit materialities, SA 320, materiality in planning and performing an audit, and going concern is SA 570, right? Then the 12th is assessing the risk of fraud, including money laundering, right? SA 240 will come into picture here. Assessing the specific risk associated with outsourcing of activities, responses to assess risk, SA number is what? SA 330. Stress testing, Basel 3 framework, and last is reliance on review of other reports, right? So we are going to discuss all these points one by one, and you can always get a question with respect to any of these points. So this first point, initial consideration by statutory auditor. So when the auditor is conducting an audit, what will be the initial consideration? So first of all, declaration of indebtedness. So all these points that are given, these are 9 points. So these are the initial consideration, matters of initial consideration by the statutory auditor. So declaration of indebtedness, internal assignments in bank by statutory auditors, planning, communication with previous auditor, terms of audit engagement, see SA 210, SA 300, Hana, you all have done all these. Initial engagements, SA 510. Assessment of engagement risk. Then establish the engagement team and understanding the bank and its environment, that is SA 315. So this topic may appear to be lengthy to you, but when you, after doing this topic, you will see that it is the easiest topic of this chapter. Why? Because it is just the repetition of whatever we have done in our earlier chapters, right? So declaration of indebtedness. Let me take you through the notes. So I've written DOI wherever I want to write declaration of indebtedness. So the RBI has advised the banks that before appointing the statutory central auditor or the branch auditor, the banks need to obtain what? Declaration of indebtedness. What is meant by indebtedness? Situation of owing money to the bank. So whether they owe any money to the bank or not, so this declaration of indebtedness will be given by the auditor to the bank. So who has asked for this requirement? The RBI has advised the banks that before appointing the statutory central auditor or the branch auditor, they need to obtain the declaration of indebtedness, right? Because see, this is going to have an impact on the independence of the auditor, right? Internal assignments in bank of statutory auditors. So if the statutory auditor are already handling any internal assignments, like let's say the concurrent audit, so in that case, that particular audit firm cannot be appointed as the statutory central auditor of that bank during that year. So the RBI decided that the audit firm should not undertake the statutory audit assignments while they are associated with the internal assignments in the bank during the same year. And internal assignments ka example can be what? Concurrent audit, right? That is the internal audit of banks conducted monthly during the year. So if any of the audit firm is there which is conducting concurrent audit, they cannot be appointed as what? Statutory auditors of the bank, same bank during that year. Clear? So these are the matters of initial consideration by statutory auditor. So first of all, declaration of solvency, and then is internal assignments in bank by statutory auditors. Then initial consideration will be what? Planning. And what is the relevant essay? Essay 300. Planning and audit of financial statement is the name of the essay. So auditor has to undertake the following activities prior to starting an initial audit. So these are to be considered, that is essay 220 and essay 210. So under essay 220, what is essay 220 related to? Quality control for an audit work. So auditor will consider whether to accept this client relationship and this specific audit engagement or not. So regarding the acceptance of client relationship, whether to accept the audit of this bank and the specific audit engagement, this particular engagement, right? And in terms of SC 210, auditor will establish an understanding of the terms of audit engagement in terms of SC 210, which is agreeing the terms of audit engagement. See, these all are basically the work which is to be done before starting the audit work. So first of all, declaration of indebtedness, then internal assignments in bank by statutory auditor, and then the planning in terms of SA 300, whereby we talk about SA 220 and SA 210. Okay. Then communication with the previous auditor, very, very important. So as per clause 8, part 1 of first schedule of the CA Act 1949, the CA in practice, a CA in practice cannot accept position as the auditor previously held by another CA without first communicating with him in writing. So before, suppose with respect to particular bank, some other CA was there and now you have been appointed. So clause 8, part 1 of the first schedule of CA Act 1949, it requires that you need to first communicate with the previous year, and that too in writing. Now, what is the purpose of communicating? So the incoming, the new auditor or you in this example should get no objection certificate, NOC, from the previous auditor through the communication that whether the previous auditor has any objection to such appointment made, and if yes, whether the reasons are valid or not, right? So another important initial consideration is what? Communicating with the previous auditor as required by clause 8 part 1 to first schedule of the CA Act 1949. Then terms of audit engagement. So now we are discussing the terms of audit engagement wala point SA 210 in little detail. So the terms of audit engagement is required for each period to be audited, and the auditor needs to agree on terms of audit engagement with bank before beginning the significant portions of the field work, that is before beginning the audit work. This is so obvious now that before beginning with the audit work you need to agree with the terms of agree the terms of audit engagement with the bank. And these terms of audit engagement should be documented in order to prevent any confusion, right? Further, see in the terms of audit engagement, the responsibilities of the auditors and the management will be agreed at the beginning of the audit assignment itself, so as it is going to prevent any confusion. So the fifth point is terms of audit engagement in terms of SA 210. Then is initial engagement, SA 510. What was the name of SA? We have already done, or what is the name of this SA? Initial audit engagement opening balances, right? So if the auditor is conducting the audit as an initial audit engagement, so after performing the procedures as are required by SS 510, if the auditor concludes that the opening balances of the financial statements contains misstatement, which materially affect the financial statement of the current period, and the effect of which has not been properly accounted or disclosed, the auditor is going to give a qualified or adverse opinion with respect to the current year, right? So initial audit is what? Where the audit was not conducted or it was conducted by predecessor auditor. Remember, we have done this S in detail. So if such is a situation, so basically this audit performing the various procedures as are required in SA 510, that the opening balances contain a misstatement that materially affect the current period financial statement, and the effect is not properly accounted for or disclosed in the financial statement, the auditor is going to give a qualified or adverse opinion. Then the seventh is assessment of engagement risk. So see, this assessment of engagement risk is a critical part of the audit process, and it is done prior to acceptance of audit engagement. See, let's say with respect to a particular bank, there are certain, let's say RBI, certain fraud has already been detected and RBI is doing certain investigations. So now risk is there with respect to this particular engagement now. So assessment of engagement risk. So which becomes a critical part of the audit process, and this is done prior to acceptance of audit evidence. Why? Because whether to accept this audit engagement or not, it is going to affect that decision. Also, it is going to affect the planning decisions of the auditor. So initial consideration ka another point is assessment of engagement risk. Then initial consideration will be what? Establishing the engagement team. So after doing the above steps, now the experienced professionals will be gathered to form the engagement team, right? And how the engagement team will be formed, the composition of the engagement team, it is going to depend upon the size, the nature, the complexity of the bank's operation. And getting an appropriate engagement team is it is really very important for managing the engagement risk, right? So this is the point. And the last point is understanding the bank and its environment. For this, I'll just say SA 315. So auditor will he'll obtain an understanding of the entity, its environment, including the internal control, in order to identify and assess the risk of material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error, and he'll obtain such an understanding which is sufficient to design and perform the further audit procedures. So this is with respect to the initial consideration. I'll just repeat all the points, the heading, and then we'll start with the next point. So conducting an audit. So when the audit of bank or branches has been done, so following stages will be there. First is what? Initial consideration by the statutory auditor. So declaration of indebtedness, internal assignments by the statutory auditor in the bank, planning, that is SA 300, whereby we talked about SA 220 and SA 210. Then communication with previous auditor, clause 8 part 1 of a schedule to C Act 1949. Then terms of audit engagement, SA 210. Then initial engagements, audit engagements, opening balances, which is SA 510. Assessment of engagement risk, then establish the engagement team, understanding the bank and its environment. So these are the various points with respect to the initial consideration by the statutory auditors. Quickly tell me, is it clear? See, Shoaib, practically the previous auditor will tell the reasons. Hana, practically the previous auditor is going to tell you all the reasons. He is going to give you all explanations in detail, because you basically, it is a responsibility. You will see in professional ethics, there is a responsibility on the previous auditor to communicate to the incoming auditor also. Right? Shoaib, is your doubt clear? Others also please reply whether this point initial consideration by statutory auditor clear, because it is a really very important topic. 9 clauses, 9 points, sub points, which are really very important. And Shoaib, is your doubt clear? So Sunil Ganga Devi is saying clear. Others also please reply. So we will do one thing before starting with the next topic, which is identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement. Let us just take a quick break of 10 minutes here, and then we'll start with this topic. And today I'll be taking up with the topic of chapter number 9, which was left in the last session. I'll complete that also. So a quick break of 10 minutes here. So we were discussing the various points of conducting an audit, whereby we have studied the 9 subpoints with respect to initial consideration by the statutory auditor. So now, as I've told you that for all those who have understood and who have learned the earlier chapters, now you are going to find these topics very easy. So when the auditor is conducting an audit, the next step after the initial considerations is what? Identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement, and the SA number is 315. So auditor will identify and assess the risk of material misstatement at the financial statement level and at the assertion level of class of transaction, account balances and disclosure, which shall provide a basis for designing and performing the further audit procedure. Because based on his assessment of SA 315, auditor is going to determine the he'll design and perform the further audit procedures, right? Then understanding the bank, its environment, including the internal control. So when the auditor understands the bank, its environment and the internal control, it enables the auditor to identify and assess the risk and to develop an audit plan to determine the operating effectiveness of controls and to address the specific risk. So here we have identified the bank and environment and including the internal control. So obviously it is going to help the auditor to identify and assess the risk and to address those specific risks and to develop an audit program to determine the operating effectiveness of the internal control. This was the third point. The fourth is understanding the bank's accounting process. Now, first was what? Initial audit consideration, then identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement. Then the second part of SA 315 is the third point, which is understanding the bank and its environment. And now the fourth is understanding the bank's accounting process. So see, the accounting process of a bank, it produces the financial and operational information for management use. Further, the bank's accounting system contributes to the bank's internal process, right? And understanding the bank's accounting process, this is going to help again the auditor to identify and assess the risk of material misstatement, whether due to fraud and error, so as to enable him to design and perform the further audit procedure. So what is the topic? Understanding the bank's accounting process. So first of all, we have written that the bank's accounting process, it produces the financial and operation information for the management use, and it contributes to the bank's internal control, because internal control in any which case is implemented on the bank's accounting system process only. This will help the auditor. This is necessary to identify and assess the risk of material misstatement, whether due to fraud and error, so as to enable the auditor to design and perform the further audit procedures. Is it clear? The fifth point is understanding the risk management process. See, management develops, controls, and uses various performance indicators in managing the key business and financial risk, right? Effective risk management requires various things. So if the banking, if we talk about the bank, so bank must have a risk management process. And in order to identify and manage the various business and financial risk, management develops, controls, and uses various performance indicators. Now, there are various subpoints to this point of understanding the risk management process, that is oversight and involvement in control process by those charged with governance, identification, measurement, and monitoring of risk, control activities, monitoring activities, reliable information system, right? So these are the 6 points that we are going to discuss. Understanding the risk management process. So the next step for the auditor is, see, first was initial consideration, then was identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement, third was understanding the bank, its environment and internal control, fourth was understanding the bank's accounting process. Now is understanding the risk management process of the bank, right? So first of all, auditor will understand as to whether those charged with governance is involved in the internal control process. So those charged with governance can be in the form of board of directors or managing director. So whether they approve the written risk management policies, and whether the policies, those which are approved, whether those are consistent with the bank's business objectives and strategies, the bank's capital strength, management's expertise, regulatory requirements, type and amount of acceptable risk. So auditor is going to understand that. First and foremost, what we are understanding, the the risk management process of the bank, right? So oversight and involvement in the control process by those charged with governance. So BOD, the managing director, whether they approve the written risk management policies, and such policies are consistent with the bank's business objectives, strategies, capital strength, management expertise required, regulatory requirements, type and amount of acceptable risk, right? Then identification, measurement and monitoring of risk. So the risk which have a significant impact on the achievement of bank's goal against the pre-approved limits and criteria. So auditor is going to identify, measure and monitor the risk which have significant impact on the achievement of the bank goals. Control activities, again the control activities as we did earlier, that is segregation of duty, physical security, accurate measurement, reporting of positions, and then authorization, approval of transactions. So whether the bank has appropriate control to mitigate its risk, that is the various internal controls that the bank has implemented. Monitoring activities. So risk management model, the methodologies, the assumptions to measure and mitigate the risk, whether all these methodologies, assumption, whether these are regularly assessed and updated, whether the function conducted the function that is conducted is independent risk buyer, independent risk management unit. So this is what monitoring activities. And students, all these things, if you just remember the chapters that we have covered so far, somewhere or the other we have already done the monitoring of the internal control. It is whose responsibility? It is on the part of the management. Now in the monitoring activity, what will be seen, that whether the risk management models, the methodologies, the assumptions which are required to measure and mitigate the risk, whether these are regularly assessed and updated, whether that function is conducted by independent risk management unit, right? Then the next point is reliable information system. So the bank requires a reliable information system which provides adequate financial operation and compliance information on a timely and consistent basis, right? Those charged with governance or management may require the risk management information which is easily understandable, so as to enable them to assess the changing nature of bank's risk profile. So whether the company is having a reliable information system, auditor is going to understand that. Now, why a reliable information system is required? Because a reliable information system provides adequate financial operation compliance information on a timely and consistent basis. So those charged with governance and management require the risk management information which is easily understandable. Why? So as to enable them to assess the changing nature of bank risk profile. So whether the risk that are associated with the banking profile, so whether these risks are changing or not, for this we require the reliable information system, because unless and until reliable information is available about the changing risk environment around the bank, those charged with governance or management cannot implement a good risk management system. Is it clear? So these were the 5 points relating to understanding the risk management process, that is oversight and involvement in the control process by those charged with governance, identification, measurement and monitoring of risk, control activities, monitoring activities, and the last is what? Reliable information system. Now, having done all this, the next thing that will come when the auditor is conducting an audit, the next point is what? Engagement team discussions. The same way we have done when we were doing the bank audit approach. So in order to gain better understanding about the bank, its environment and internal control, and to assess the potential for material misstatement of financial statement, they need to be what? Engagement team discussions. Establishing an overall audit strategy. So you all are aware about SA 300, that planning and audit of financial statement. So the objective of the auditor is to plan an audit so that it is performed in an effective manner, right? For this, the engagement partner should establish an overall audit strategy prior to commencement of audit. And in doing that, involve the key team members plus the specialist in establishing the overall audit strategy. And this overall audit strategy depends upon the characteristics of the audit engagement. Simple. You all are aware about the overall audit strategy. We have done this in the earlier chapters in detail. So this point is with respect to SA 300, planning and audit of financial statement, which says that the objective of the auditor is to plan an audit so that it can be performed in an effective manner. For this, the engagement partner should establish an overall audit strategy prior to commencement of audit and involve the key engagement team members plus specialists. Establishing the overall audit strategy, it depends upon what? The characteristics of the audit engagement. So, though we did SA 300 in the point number 7, but that was more specifically with respect to establishing an overall audit strategy. Now, the next point is developing an audit plan. So, again, SA 300, developing an audit plan. But here now we are talking about audit plan. So, plan the audit of financial statement in an effective manner. Again, involvement of key members is required while planning the audit. Simple. The next point is also relating to planning, but the point is audit planning memorandum. Quickly tell me what is meant by the term memorandum. I have told you this about this earlier also. Memorandum. Quickly send in your replies. So summary, right? So the auditor will summarize the audit plan by preparing the audit planning memorandum. Memorandum is what? Summarize, right? Why? So such audit planning memorandum will summarize, will explain what? It will describe the expected scope and extent of audit procedures to be performed by the auditor. So basically this point says that planning में जो आता है ना, तो main points का summary the auditor has to prepare. Audit planning memorandum, that is summarizing the audit plan by preparing the audit planning memorandum. So expected scope and extent of audit procedures to be performed by auditor. Highlight all significant issues and risk identified during planning and risk assessment activities and decision concerning reliance on internal control. So whatever has been done so far, we are going to summarize that. Provide evidence that the plan, the audit engagement was planned appropriately, and that the audit team have responded to the engagement risk, the pervasive risk, specific risk, plus other matters that affect the audit engagement. So in order to give an evidence of all these things, auditor is going to prepare the audit planning memorandum. This is again an important topic. You may get a 3-mark question with respect to this topic. So auditor will summarize the audit plan by preparing the audit planning memorandum in order to describe the expected scope and timing of audit procedures to be performed by auditor, highlighting all significant issues and risk identified during planning and risk assessment activities, plus the decisions concerning reliance on controls, providing the evidence that the audit engagement was planned appropriately and that they have responded to engagement risk, pervasive risk, specific risk, and other matters affecting the audit engagement. Clear? Determining audit materiality. So earlier you have replied that SA 320 is the relevant essay with respect to audit materiality. So auditor will consider the relationship between the audit materiality and audit risk. Audit materiality it is a matter of professional judgment, and it depends upon the knowledge of banking, assessment of engagement risk, and the reporting requirement of financial statement. So simple, that the auditor has to consider what the relationship between the audit materiality and the audit risk, and determining audit materiality is a matter of professional judgment, and it depends upon the auditor's knowledge of the bank, the assessment of engagement risk, and the reporting requirement of the financial statements. Considering going concern, you all are aware that whether there are events or conditions that may cause significant doubt on the entity's ability to continue as a going concern. We all have done this a number of times. So this is with respect to considering the going concern. So before proceeding with the next topic, let us just quickly have a look as to what we have done in this topic. So the topic that we are covering is, just a minute, conducting an audit, and whereby we saw that it started with initial consideration by the statutory auditor, whereby we did 9 points, that is declaration of indebtedness, internal assignments in bank by statutory auditor, planning SC 300, whereby we studied about SC 220 and SC 210, then communication with previous auditor, then terms of audit engagement SC 210, initial engagements SC 510, assessment of engagement risk, establishing the engagement team, understanding the bank and its environment. Related to this point only are our next 3 points, that is identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement SC 315. How is the next point, understanding the bank, its environment, including IC. Then the fourth, understanding the bank's accounting process, right? Fifth is understanding the risk management process, whereby we have studied further subpoints, that is oversight and involvement in central control process by those charged with governance, identification, measurement and monitoring of risk, control activities, monitoring activities, reliable information system. Then 6 point is what? Engagement team discussions, establishing the overall audit strategy, and developing the audit plan in terms of SC 300. Establishing overall audit strategy also we refer to SC 300. Then the 9th is audit planning memorandum, which we have discussed in detail. Then determining the audit materiality. Quickly tell me whatever we have done so far, is it clear? Then we'll proceed. Then we did consider GC, going concern, and then we are to start with the 12th point, which is assess the risk of fraud, including money laundering. Tell me whatever we have done, is it clear? Sunil Gangadev is saying clear. Others also please reply. So see, the next point is assess the risk of fraud, including money laundering. So here we'll be referring to SC 240 relating to fraud. So the auditor's responsibility relating to fraud in an audit of financial statement. See, the auditor's objective in terms of SC 240 is to identify and assess the risk of material misstatement in financial statement due to fraud, and to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence on those identified misstatement and respond appropriately. So when we are saying that the auditor has to assess the risk of fraud, including money laundering, so we are referring to 240. So this includes money laundering also. So here, along with applying professional skepticism that the auditor has to apply, since fraud is there or fraud can be there, auditor has to consider the guidelines issued by RBI with respect to prevention of money laundering and the various KYC norms that RBI issues from time to time. Right? So assessing the risk of fraud, including money laundering. So SC 240, whereby auditor has to identify and assess the risk of material misstatement due to fraud and to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence on these identified misstatement and to respond appropriately. So auditor needs to exercise professional skepticism plus the RBI guidelines with respect to prevention of money laundering and the KYC norms, right? Then the 13th point is assess the specific risk. So auditor has to identify and assess the risk of material misstatement at financial statement level, which relate pervasively to the financial statement as a whole and potentially affect many assertions. So pervasive risk is what? That is going to have an impact on the financial statement as a whole, that is going to affect many assertions, right? We have discussed this in detail when we were discussing about the risk assessment procedure to be performed at the assertion level and at the financial statement level. Next is risk associated with outsourcing of activities. See, in a bank, number of activities are outsourced. So it says that the modern day banks, there is extensive use of outsourcing. So what are the various benefits associated with outsourcing? Why the banks are outsourcing the services? Because of reduced cost and the use of services of experts, which is not internally available. So first of all, their expertise is used and there is reduced cost. Maybe the cost of getting the things done in-house is more vis-a-vis outsourcing the activities. However, with respect to outsourcing, a number of risks are involved, which the bank management has to manage. So auditor will obtain an understanding of the risks associated with the outsourcing of activities and how the bank is managing that. The 16th one is stress testing. Stress testing in case of banks. See, it is basically software testing activity. So whether the software that is being used is robust, so the robustness, that is whether it is strong or not, right? So testing beyond the limits of normal operations. So beyond those limits, if a situation is there, let's say the normal transactions that can happen in a day is 1 lakh, and the software that has been implemented is according to this. Now, let's say on a particular situation, let's say 5 lakh transactions took place. For example, let's say some monetization has happened. So whether the the software of the organization is strong enough to bear this situation also. So stress testing. So software testing activity, which determines the robustness is what? How strong the software is. So testing beyond the limits of normal operation. And it is important for mission critical software. So software which is meant for some particular missions, but also for all types of software. And the all commercial banks, they should put in place the board approved testing framework as per the individual requirements of the bank and integrate it into the risk management process of the bank. Now, what is it? So stress testing is what? Software testing activity which determines the robustness that of the software, that is testing beyond limits of normal operations. I hope this is clear. And it is most important with respect to mission critical software, the software that are implemented for some important purpose. However, this stress testing is important for all types of softwares also. All the commercial banks should put in place the board approved stress testing framework, the stress testing framework which has been approved by the board as per the individual requirement of the bank, and they should integrate it into the risk management process of the bank. Is it clear? Stress testing, a new topic and which is important. You may get a 3-mark question that write a note if you get a straightforward question. So write a short note with respect to stress testing. Is it clear? Is it clear? Quickly send in your replies. And the next is Basel III framework on norms or accords. See, due to the subprime crisis which happened in 2007-8, right? So there are international banking regulations issued by the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, and the Financial Stability Board, right? So these are the global regulatory frameworks which are there in order to make banks more resilient, that is more strong. So what is the requirement? So there is a requirement to have the minimum set of criteria for inclusion in of instruments in the new definition of regulatory capital. So certain instruments are to be included in the regulatory capital of the bank. So this is, as I've told you, that in response to subprime crisis, certain regulatory framework has been established by the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision and Financial Stability Board. Right? So let me do one thing. Let me just take you through the module for this point. Point number 17, which is on page number 10.20 of your module. So 17th. So Basel III framework. So Basel norms or accords are the international banking regulations issued by BCBs, that is Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, and the Financial Stability Board has undertaken an extensive review of regulatory framework in wake of subprime crisis. So in response to the subprime crisis, extensive review of the banking regulatory framework was done. In the document titled Basel III, a global regulatory framework for more resilient, more strong banks and banking system, was released by BCBS in December 2010. It has inter alia is what, among other things, propose certain minimum set of criteria for inclusion of instruments in the new definition of regulatory capital. The set of agreement by the BCBS, which mainly focuses on risks to bank and financial system, are called Basel Accord. Is it clear? And the last point is reliance on and review of other reports. So the last point that the auditor has to consider is auditor has to take into account the adverse comments on advances appearing in various kinds of reports. So you may get a question that what are the various kinds of report which the auditor has to consider or he has to review as the while conducting an audit. So previous year audit report, latest internal inspection reports of bank officials, Reserve Bank's latest inspection report. So internal inspection report or RBI's inspection report, concurrent or internal audit report, report on verification of security, any other internal report specially related to particular accounts, managers charge handling over report when incumbent is changed. So when let's say the branch manager is changed, so from one manager the file has been handed over to the other manager, so those reports, right? So those all the above reports should be reviewed in detail. The statutory central auditor, he must review the annual financial inspection report of RBI relating to banks. And in case of any variations in provisions, the same should, which has been reported to RBI, reported by RBI, whether the same has been properly considered by the bank manager, auditor is going to consider that, right? Is it clear? So this is with respect to what? The various reports that the auditor has to consider. So let me just take you through the module once. So the topic is what? Conducting an audit, whereby we have studied 18 points. Initial consideration by the statutory auditor, whereby we did 9 points. Then relating to the last point, ninth point, the ninth sub point. So the second point is what? Identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement. Third, understanding the bank, its environment and internal control. Fourth, understanding the bank's accounting process. Fifth, understanding the risk management process, whereby we studied about the involvement and oversight of those charged with governance, identification, measurement, monitoring of risk, control activities, monitoring activities, reliable information system. Then the sixth point is engagement team discussion. Seventh is establish the overall audit strategy. Then develop the audit plan, audit planning memorandum. So your point number 7, 8, 9 are basically based on essay 300. SC 320, that is determine materiality, audit materiality, and 11th is SC 570, that is consider the going concern. 12th is SF 240, that is assess the risk of fraud, including money laundering. So here we have seen that KYC norms, and along with this, the specific guidelines for prevention of money laundering and professional skepticism auditor has to apply. Assessing the specific risk, then risk associated with outsourcing of activities. So we have seen the various advantages and disadvantages of outsourcing of activities. Responses to assess risk, that is done under SA 330. Stress testing, then Basel III framework, and last but not the least is reliance on or review of other reports. So now, so we have covered till page number 10.21. So before starting with advances topic, let me just finish this small box which is given here. So it basically says that when the auditor is carrying the substantive procedures, so substantive procedures in case of a bank. So when the auditor is checking the advances, he's performing the substantive procedures. So auditor will check all large advances. He'll examine all large advances, and other advances which are not large, auditor is going to check that on a sampling basis, right? If there are any accounts that indicate problem, auditor is going to examine them in detail unless that is insignificant. And the extent of sample of checking, this is going to depend upon the auditor's assessment of the efficacy of internal control. Now, what is a large advance? As we have seen that large advances may to all are to be examined. It depends upon the volume of operation of the branch. For example, an example is given here on page number 10.21. An advance may be considered to be large advance if the year-end balance is in excess of, let's say, rupees 10 CR or 10% of aggregate year-end advances of the branch, whichever is less. So this is just an example that based on the volume of operations, a large advance will be considered, which is bank specific, right? So basically, it says that when the auditor is considering the advances, he is going to examine all large advances, other advances go on a sample basis. If any account is having a problem, that examine that in detail unless it is insignificant. And the extent of sampling is going to depend upon the auditor's assessment of the efficacy of the internal control. Clear? And what is a large advance? It depends upon the volume of operations of the branch, right? So now why we are studying this topic of substantive procedures? Because the next topic that we are going to study is advances. And now do you all know that with respect to all advances, with respect to the large advances, all advances are to be checked. And in fact, other advances are to be checked on sample basis. So now we are going to understand as to what is advance, where do they come in the balance sheet of a bank, right? So before doing that, I want all of you to reply as to whether whatever we have done, that is we have covered till page number 10.21 of your module, whether it is clear or not. Quickly send in your replies. Sunil Ganga Devi saying clear. Shoaib, Sukanya, please reply whether whatever we have done is clear or not. Students have a tendency to leave this topic, bank audit, because they find it very technical. But students, I like to remind you that chapter number 9 and chapter number 10 together, it can come for 8 to 12%. And you can always get a 3, 4 or 5 mark question out of this chapter. And this is not not a technical chapter. This is an easy chapter. Provided you just, as I always say, give this chapter a reading once or twice. I'm sure that having done all the earlier chapters, this chapter is going to be very easy for you to understand and learn also. So next topic that we are going to do is advances. So what are advances? Advances are the advances that are given in a If you remember, when we did the various functions of commercial bank, when we were doing the various types of banks as the first topic of today's session, we did that the one of the function of the commercial bank is to grant the advances and to accept the deposits. So what are advances? So advances are the amount of money or credit given as a loan from bank to another party with an agreement that money will be repaid. I'll read this again. Amount of money or credit given as a loan from bank to another party with an agreement that money will be repaid, right? And all banks see when they give loans, so interest is charged as a compensation for borrowing. And student, these advances is the largest item of the asset side of a bank. And in fact, the income with respect to this advances, these are a major source of income for the bank also. So the auditor must have adequate knowledge about the banking industry, its regulations, the functional area of bank branches, its process, procedures, the system and the internal control associated with banks in order to understand the advances assertion, the various assertions relating to advances. Now, what are the various types of advances? Funded advances and non-funded advances. Quickly tell me, what do you understand by the term funded advances? Quickly send in your replies. Quickly, students, send in your replies. Shoaib, Sunil, Gangadev, Sukaina. So funded advances can be there, non-funded loan can be there, or advance. So as the name suggests, funded loans. So where there is actual transfer of funds. So if a loan is received, let's say, so the amount will come to the account. So there is transfer of funds. So the loans where there is actual transfer of funds from bank to the borrowers is what funded advances, right? Example can be term loans, cash credits, overdrafts, demand loans, bill discounted and purchase, participation on risk sharing basis, interest bearing staff loans. Simple. So what is meant by non-funded loans? So where there is no, which does not involve any such transfer of funds, right? So facilities are those which do not involve such transfer. Example can be what? Letter of credit or the bank guarantees. So as funds are not transferred, guarantees given, letter of credit is issued, right? So as such, no fund transfer is involved here, right? Then your advances can be based on the sectors for sectors where these are given. So there can be priority sector or the non-priority sector. So the RBI, it issues the guideline whether a particular sector is priority sector. For example, agriculture sector, the MSME sector, the educational sector or the housing sector. These are what the priority sectors, right? And with respect to priority sector, the RBI issues the common guidelines. Bank has to follow them. These guidelines can be with respect to the rate of interest, the service charge, the receipt, the sanction, the disbursement register, the loan application, and various other things. And the bank also issues targets for the banks for lending to the priority sector, that itna to amount you need to lend to priority sector in a year, right? So sir, targets are also given. So this was with respect to the priority sector. The next can be in the form of security, right? Based on the nature of security. So the bank, see, whenever a loan is given by a bank, the bank may also ask for security or collateral while lending, right? So why? Because in order to ensure that the borrower will return the money in the prescribed time, so a loan is given. So if if there is a guarantee, if there is a security that has been given, let's say the security of, let's say, the property papers, the title deeds of the house of, let's say, A. So there is it ensures that the borrower is going to repay in the prescribed time. And if the borrower does not pay, then the bank has the legal authority to sell the collateral to receive its, to recover its amount, to sell the collateral and to recover its amount. Right? Is it clear? So there can be what? Primary collateral, and there can be the primary security, and there can be collateral security. So we're talking about what? Security. So let me just take you through the relevant topic. So security wise, we are on page number 10.24 of your module. So this is what security wise. So it says that banks ask security or collateral while lending to ensure that borrower will return the money to bank in the prescribed time, else the banks have legal authority to sell the collateral to recover its money, right? The nature of security can be primary security and collateral security. So primary security is the security against which the loan is given. So the security offered by the borrower for bank finance, or the one against which the credit has been extended by the bank. This security is the principal security for an advance. It is what? The principal security for an advance. Now, what is collateral security? So it is an additional security, and it can be in the form of tangible or intangible assets, movable or immovable asset. So the various common types of securities accepted by banks can be, so you may get a 3-mark question that what are the various kinds of securities that are acceptable by banks. So personal security of guarantor, goods, stock, debtors, trade receivables, gold, ornaments or bullions, immovable property, right? Plantation, right? For agriculture advances, third party guarantees, bankers general lien, life insurance policies, plantations we have done, stock exchange securities and other instruments, right? Now the next topic, which is very interesting, is what? Mode of creation of security. Quickly tell me what can be the various modes for creation of security when we take a loan from the bank. Quickly send in your replies. Student, please send in your replies. So, pledging, mortgage, assignment, Shoaib is saying. Others also please reply. See, it can be mortgage, pledge, hypothecation, assignment, setup, or lien, right? So we will discuss all these 6 modes one by one. After completing this topic, I'll complete that topic of chapter number 9, right? With respect to audit of local bodies, right? So mode of creation of security. So first is mortgage. See, mortgage can be registered mortgage or equitable mortgage. So in case of registered mortgage, a registered instrument is affected, that is mortgage deed, which is signed by the mortgager, and it registers the property to the mortgagee as a security. So a registered instrument by the name of mortgage deed is to be signed by the mortgager in case of registered mortgage. However, in case of equitable mortgage, the same is affected by mere delivery of title deeds or other documents of the title with the intent to create security. So as such, there is no need or there is no requirement to get a separate registered instrument, that is mortgage deed, as was required in registered mortgage. So in case of registered mortgage, a separate registered instrument is to be created. Equitable mortgage में तो mere delivery of the title deed is will affect what? A mortgage, right? pledge. So in case of the pledge, the goods, the delivery of the goods is given by the borrower to the lending bank. So the goods with respect to which are given as a security, those goods are given to the bank. So it involves the bailment or delivery of goods by the borrower to the lending bank. Why? With the intention of creating a charge thereon as a security for the advance. Though the legal ownership is that of the pledger himself, and the lending bank, it gets defined interest in those goods only. So with respect to the goods that has been given as a pledge, with respect to that only, there will be security on those goods, right? So the delivery or the bailment of the goods is transferred by the borrower to the lending bank in this case. Hypothecation. So you will see that these are more or less the same creation mode of creation of security with a difference of 1 or 2 points. Like in case of mortgage, registered mortgage may separate instrument. Registered instrument is to be affected, which is to be signed by the mortgager. Equitable mortgage may, it is affected by mere delivery of the mortgage of the title deed. Pledge may, the goods, the bailment delivery of the goods which are given as a security, that is given by the borrower to the lending bank, right? Though the ownership is with the pledger itself. Now hypothecation में क्या होता है? Hypothecation में the ownership and the possession of the goods is not transferred to the bank, right? Hypothecation में the goods, they are kept with the borrower. The borrower holds the physical possession of the goods as an agent of the bank. Neither the ownership nor the possession is transferred to the bank, right? But the borrower periodically submits the statements. For example, let's say with respect to debtors, or let's say with respect to inventory. So stock. So such borrower is going to submit the monthly statements to the bank, monthly or let's say quarterly statements to the bank, that we have so much of the debtors or the stocks, right? And based on those statements, the drawing power of the borrower is fixed as to how much amount he can draw from the account. So let us just read all these three and then we'll proceed with the further three. So mortgage. So the mortgage are of several kinds, but the most important are registered and equitable. In registered mortgage, it can be affected by a registered instrument called the mortgage deed signed by the mortgager. It registers the property to the mortgagee as a security. Equitable, on the other hand, it is affected by mere delivery of the title deeds or other documents of title with the intent to create a security thereof. Pledge. A pledge involves bailment or delivery of goods by borrower to the lending bank with the intention of creating a charge thereon as security for the advance. The legal ownership of the goods remain with the pledger, while the lending bank gets the defined interest in the goods. The pledge of security constitutes a specific or the fixed charge with respect to the goods which have been given on pledge. Hypothecation. It is the creation of equitable charge which is created in favor of lending bank by execution of a hypothecation agreement in respect of movable securities belonging to the borrower. So neither the ownership nor the possession is transferred to the bank. However, the borrower holds physical possession of the goods as an agent or trustee of the bank. The borrower periodically submits statement regarding quantity, value of hypothecated assets to the lending banker, on the basis of which the drawing power of the borrower is fixed. Is it clear? Is it clear? The next topic is assignment. So basically, it says that the rights with respect to any future debt, those are assigned to the bank. For example, in case of your debtors, or life insurance policy, some amount is to be received on a future date, that is assigned to the third party. So assignment represents a transfer of an existing or future debt, right, or property belonging to a person in favor of another person. Only actionable claims like claim to any debt other than debt secured by mortgage of immovable property or by hypothecation or pledge of movable property, such as book debts, life insurance policies, these are accepted by banks as security by way of assignments. Shoaib, you are right. So assignment, it represents the transfer of existing or future debt. So right or property belonging to a person is transferred to the other person, right? And such an assignment gives the assignee, for example, the bank in our case, absolute right over the monies or debts assigned to him. Clear? Now the next one is set off and the last is lien. So let us first do sixth point, lien. That is, it is creation of legal charge with consent of the owner, which gives the lender a legal right to seize, dispose, or liquidate the asset under lien. So if any asset is there under lien, so the lender may sell, dispose of, seize, or liquidate the asset if it is required. That is, if let's say the borrower is not able to repay, so the lender may exercise his lien and he may seize, dispose, or liquidate the asset. Right? What is meant by set off? So if we talk about set off in terms of banks, so there is a right of set off that enables a bank to combine two accounts, deposit account and the loan account of the same person, provided both the accounts are in the same name and the same right. So the capacity of the account holder in both the accounts should be same. So, and all the branches shall be considered as one entity, and the right to set off can be exercised in respect of time barred debts. So let's say a person is having as an individual a deposit account as well as a loan account. And in the loan account, something is to be received, that is, interest is to be received, and in the deposit amount is there, interest is to be received. Interest is to be the party, let's say Mr. A is there, he has to get the interest with respect to that is deposit amount, and he needs to pay interest to the bank with respect to the loan account. So the set off option is there with respect to these two accounts, provided they are in the same name and in the same right, that is same capacity. So he is holding both the accounts as an individual, right? Is it clear? So see, set off is a statutory right of a creditor to adjust wholly or partly the debit balance in the debtor's account against any credit balance lying in another account of the debtor. The right of set off enables the bank to combine two accounts, that is deposit account and a loan account of the same person, provided both the accounts are in the same name and same right, that is the capacity of the account holder in the both accounts should be the same. So it should not happen that in one account he is holding it as a partner of a firm, in the other account he is holding it as what, an individual. So both the accounts individual, right, or both the accounts partner. For the purpose of setup, all the branches of a bank are treated as one single entity, and the right of setup can be exercised with respect to the time barred debts also. So this was with respect to your various types of mode of creation of security. So the next topic is prudential norms on income recognition, which I'll start in the next session only. So let us just quickly have a look as to what we have done so far as chapter number 10 is concerned, and then I'll just quickly take you through that small topic of chapter number 9. So students, we started with the various types of bank, whereby we did commercial bank, RRB, regional rural bank, cooperative bank, payment bank, development bank, small finance banks. Then we saw the role of RBI as the regulator of the banking industry and the various functions of RBI. Then banking operations are conducted only at branches. The other offices act as controlling authority or administrative offices. Then the regulatory framework. So I told you that just you should be able to remember names of 4 or 5 acts at least, right? Then the peculiarities relating to banking sector is huge volume and complexity of transaction, wide geographical spread of banks network, large range of products and services offered, extensive use of technology, and strict vigilance. Types of reports are the report on adequacy and effectiveness, operating effectiveness of IC over FR, 143 subsection 3 clause 1. Then LFAR, SLR requirements, treasury operations, income recognition, asset classification, provisioning. Then serious irregularities. Then status on recommendations of the committee, that is Ghosh committee with respect to fraud and malpractices, and your Jilani committee with respect to internal control and inspection credit system. And last, a report with respect to adverse credit and deposit ratio in the rural areas. Understanding the accounting system, we saw that there has been a sea change in the use of technology. Continuous evolution is there. Anytime, anywhere, banking facilities have been given to the comfort of the customers, real-time basis per internet, mobile connectivity, expeditious transactions, but the transactions are voluminous. So auditor needs to understand the recording, transmission, and storage along with the internal control system. And in a computerized environment, so I told you this is an important, you may get a practical question out of this also. In a computerized environment, it is important for the auditor to be familiar with the norms, parameters set by the RBI guidelines and whether the same has been incorporated in the banking system. And he should not go by the assumption that system generated information is correct and can be relied upon without evidence. And he needs to apply professional skepticism, prudence, and wherever manually something needs to be performed to check the authenticity and consistency of the information, he should do that. Bank audit approach mein we did drawing an audit plan, control environment at the bank, and the engagement team discussions, the various matters which can be involved as in the discussion and the advantages of such a discussion. Income recognition policy, this particular topic I'll be taking up when we'll be starting with the next topic in the next session, which is on Friday. Students, we have a session on Friday now, right? Monday also we are having a session, but for this chapter, we'll be completing this chapter in the session scheduled on Friday. So form, content, and financial statement, we saw section 29, subsection 1 and 2 may, it says that a form and content will be as given in this section. So balance sheet, P&L, third schedule, form A and form B, right? Further, banking company hai to accounting standards ka compliance. Audit of accounts, section 30, subsection 1. So the auditor needs to the auditor will be same as qualified for companies auditor, eligibility, qualification, disqualification will be same. Appointment of auditor, banking company में AGM shareholder, nationalized bank में it will be bank through acting through board of directors, but both the cases में RBI approval before the appointment is made, and in case of RRBs, bank along with the approval of central government. Remuneration में, if it is a banking company, section 142 of the Companies Act, that is general meeting में or the manner as the company in general meeting may determine. And in case of nationalized bank SBI, it shall be Reserve Bank of India in consultation with the central government. Powers will be same as that of the company's auditor. Auditor's report में nationalized bank में central government को report दिया जाएगा. Whether in his opinion, financial statement give a true and fair view, and all the explanation and the information that was asked for, whether the same was received and it is satisfactory. Transactions, whether they are within the powers. Returns received from branches, adequate for the purpose of audit, and any other matter which he considers to be brought to the notice of CG. SBI के case में भी same है, an identical report. Format will be, it should comply with essays. Not only the quantification of the unaudited branches, but along with that, not only the number of unaudited branches, but quantification of advances, deposits, interest income, interest expense. That should also be disclosed in the audit report, useful information for the users of the financial statement. Along with that, reporting of 143, but CARO reporting is not required. LFAR, in the terms of appointment of various banks, public sector bank, private sector bank, foreign banks, it may be required to give LFAR. So the matters that are prescribed, specified by RBI, latest by 30th June, it is to be submitted to the bank. And for this, proper planning is required so that it can be given on a timely basis. Executive summary ke as such, there is no requirement in the format, but the members may consider providing the same to bring out the key observations from the whole document. Reporting to RBI में circular issued by RBI relating to implementation of recommendations of committee on legal aspects on fraud, bank frauds applicable to all scheduled commercial bank except for RRB. So it says that if any of the auditor if comes across and finds anything susceptible to fraud or fraudulent activity or act of access power or smell any foul play in any transaction, the same should be reported to the regulator, and any deliberate failure shall be make him liable for action. SA 250 says consideration of laws and regulations in an audit of financial statement says that such communication, so basically the duty of confidentiality is overridden by statute, law, or courts. It will not be considered as the violation of confidentiality. So SA 240 says auditor's responsibility relating to a fraud of financial statement. So auditor will obtain reasonable assurance as to whether the financial statement as a whole are free from material misstatement, whether caused by fraud or error. And auditor is not expected to take into account each and every transaction, but to consider the system as a whole. But while performing the normal duties, if he comes across any instance, the same should be reported to RBI in addition to the chairman, managing director, chief executive of the concerned bank. Then conducting an audit may be did 18 points. Initial consideration by the statutory auditor, identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement, understanding the bank and its environment, including internal control, understanding bank accounting process, understanding the risk management process, engagement team discussion, establishing overall audit strategy, developing audit plan, audit planning memorandum. So the 3 points relating to SFI 300. Audit materiality, going concern. Then SC 240, assess the risk of fraud, including money laundering. So professional skepticism, know your customers, and money laundering are guidelines. Assess specific risk associated with outsourcing of activities, responses to assess risk SC 330, stress testing, Basel 3 framework, and last but not the least, reliance on review of other reports. So I hope this is clear to all of you. Now, let me just quickly take you through the topic that was left in the chapter number 9. So with respect to the audit of local bodies, one topic was left that is going to take just 2-3 minutes. I'll just complete that. And in the next session, we are going to start with the various prudential norms. So just a minute. This is chapter number 9, audit of local bodies. So this was the topic financial administration. Let me just tell you the page number. So this is on page number 9.24. So this is basically we're talking about the audit of local bodies like municipality and all. So here one point is relating to financial administration. The page number is 9.24. Right? So basically it says that the auditor needs to understand the financial administration of local bodies before starting the audit. So 3 aspects are considered here: budgetary procedures, expenditure control, and accounting system. Very interesting and very, peculiar to local bodies, municipalities. So the budgetary procedure, it says that, see, budgetary procedure will involve the financial accountability as to who is accountable to sanction that budget and control of expenditure. That is the limit within which that expenditure can be incurred, right? And it is usually budgets are created, usually it will involve determining the levels of taxation, that is what tax is to be included, the rates, and the ceiling on expenditure. So the revenue and the expenditure पे क्या क्या ceiling है, what are the rates, right? Now these municipal budgets, the formats and the heads, they may vary from state to state. Also, there is a variation between the corporations and the municipalities. That is, in case of municipal budgets, there is no strict separation between the revenue and the capital items. So the capital items are shown under the head extraordinary items. Further, in case of municipal budgets, there are separate budgets or specific funds, for example, for roads, for educations, for water supply. For these specific things, there are budgets which the auditor has to obtain an understanding. So, budgetary procedure may, this point basically says that these are the peculiar features with respect to the municipality budget, which the auditor has to consider. So, it says that financial accountability देखना है, control over expenditure देखना है, and when the budget is decided, so basically it is determining the levels of taxation, the rates, and the ceilings on expenditure. Further, municipal budgets ka format and head, it may vary from state to state, and corporations ka and municipality ka budget mein there is a difference. That is, there is no strict separation between the revenue and capital, and usually extraordinary items ka head is used for capital transactions. Further, there will be number of special funds, specific mutual functions like your education, enterprise activities, water supply, sanitation, and electricity. Clear? Second is expenditure control. So it says that, like in case of central government and state government, there is a clear demarcation of legislature and executive. A legislature as to who is making the law and who is executing it. However, this clear demarcation is not there in case of municipality. So there is integration of legislation and executive powers, right? Also, executive powers and functions may be with different persons. So one finance officer responsible for municipal council may not be there. So you cannot hold one person responsible for a particular expenditure. Therefore, what can be the system on which the you can rely, so far as you have to consider whether the expenditure is within the control or not? The only option available is external audit. Why? Because see, it says like in state and center, there is no clear demarcation or separation of what legislature and executive. So integration of legislature and executive is there, and the person who is executive, he cannot carry on the inquisitorial work as well. Inquisitorial means the authority to conduct official investigation. So if he himself has done something, he cannot himself investigate that, right? So that is why external auditor has to consider this. And last is relating to accounting system, which says that the accounting system, the municipal accounting and budgets are not simple. They are not comprehensive, and they may contain a number of, you can say, inadequate information or surfeit of information. What is meant by surfeit of information? Excessive amount of information. So the auditor needs to understand this. Both these situations are not conducive to proper system of management information. So this financial administration, this is consisting of 3 points: budgetary procedure, expenditure control, and accounting system, whereby we are understanding that these are the peculiar feature relating to budget, expenditure, and accounting system of a municipality, which the auditor has to understand. Is it clear? Now your topic SS 710 of chapter number 8 is left, which I'll cover up in the next session, which is on Friday. And students, please remember, Monday to we have session, but this time we are going to have a session on Friday also, whereby I'll be covering chapter number 10, completing chapter number 10, and then we'll be left with one chapter, last chapter of this entire syllabus, which is chapter number 11. Right? So quickly tell me whether you have understood whatever we have done. So I think we have done covered till page number 24, 10 point. Let me just see. We have covered till page number 10.26, And in the next session, I'll be completing this topic, this entire chapter. So Sunil Gangadev is saying clear. So I hope it is clear to others also. So we will end the session for today and see you on a session on Friday for completing chapter number 10. Thank you and bye-bye. Yes, over.